Very good morning to all of you. I welcome you all on behalf of the TheSideClinics Inside series. My name is Dr. Gaurav Patel. I'm a transplant surgeon currently working at Nanavati Max Super Specialty Hospital. Apart from a surgeon, I'm a father. I authored one book on parenting called The Science of Early Parenting. I read, travel a lot whenever I get time. I do Vipassana meditations, and I consider myself as a lifelong learner. So this idea of starting this series was been with me for a long time. The idea was to learn things that you don't learn in medical school, but those things are equally or maybe more important than clinical medicine. Here, I mean, you can learn by yourself, or you just create a community, collaborative community where with diverse ecosystem where professionals with various phases of their career and accomplished in niche domains with resources um, probably can expedite our learning. So the Inside series is part of this initiative where we meet bi-monthly with one of the accomplished speaker. So domains of interest are health and wellness, finance, essential skill set, career, and clinical practice. In health and wellness, I want to know more about burnout, physical and mental health, work-life balance, MST in healthcare professionals, as well as physical physician wellness. In finance, I want to know more about wealth management, personal finance, taxing, and investing. In essential skill set, we like to know more about statistics, clinical research, and soft skill sets. In careers, we'll explore mentorship, alternative career paths, opportunities, entrepreneurship, and other resources. In clinical practice, where somebody just started a clinic practice or somebody into the clinic practice, how to increase the how to start a clinical practice, how to set up a clinic, how to start a hospital, how to market yourself, how to handle social media and personal branding. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. Ravi Mohanka, who is Director, Liver Transplant and HPV Surgery at Sir H.N. Reliance Hospital. So, he is going to talk about the importance of MBA in clinical practice. So, in transplant field, he doesn't need any introduction, but I would like to brief his introduction. So he did his MS from Government Medical College, Nagpur. He did his ASTS fellowship from Thomas Strasel Transplant Institute and University of Rochester Medical Center. Apart from that, he also did his MBA from Bombay IIT. He has more than 20 years of experience across the hospitals like Bombay Hospital, Sir Gangaram Hospital, Apollo Hospital, Medanta, and Global Hospital, where he lead the program for almost 7-8 years. So currently, he's a director of liver transplant and HPV surgery at Sir H.N. Reliance Hospital. So the structure of the talk is so he'll be speaking on the topic for almost 20-25 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for question answer for 10 to 15 minutes. So now I would like to hand over this floor to Dr. Ravi Mohanka. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And this is again something that I passionately feel that as doctors, we need to do this. And let's start and see how it goes. Basically, I did an MBA some time ago. And apart from being a doctor, I am a lot of things. And family man, a teacher, I definitely like to I'm a technology enthusiast. All right. So, but then, I'm also an innovator now, and I did a TEDx speech on one of the topics. But this all I've started doing after I did an MBA, and I'll tell you why. As doctors, we are restricted in what we think beyond healthcare. It's like a tunnel vision. we are only restricted to what we know, and we don't feel comfortable thinking about the rest of the world. There are few of us who do investments in stock markets and things like that, but most of the things that we think about is all healthcare related. We, even if we want to grow, we want to grow our practice. If we want to grow, then we want to open a hospital. That's what we always think about. But the world is much bigger than that. And the reason I did it is mostly curiosity. I just wanted to know what the rest of the world looks like. But I also had this in mind that, if at all I want to have an alternate career apart from surgery, because at some point you will not be able to do surgery anymore, what do I do at that point? And then I thought that, medical administration may be something to look at. And then the other thing that has always been on my mind is that, how you hear of these doctors who have really done well by owning their own hospital or establishing their own hospitals. And then I thought, why not this? And therefore I got interested in this and sort of said, let's me take the first step, and then started this MBA. Now, what I realized very what I realized very immediately is that it's really not possible to do a full-time MBA, because it's, with clinical practice, it's almost impossible to do. I did a small course which was purely distance learning, and I realized that didn't learn much. There was all these modules that came to me. I read them, gave an exam, but then really there was very little learning from that. And therefore, the only way to do that was doing a hybrid where I could attend classes, ask questions, have good faculty teach me. And therefore, I chose this program, which is a joint program by IIT Bombay and Washington University. The few things when you choose a program is reputation, because not all MBAs are the same. This is people who are typically engineers or finance guys who do MBA. They know this very well, that MBA from a Ivy League place or a good place is very different from a local place, and they carry very different value in the sort of let's say market. But then although that was important, but my main reason for choosing a good program was that I should get good learning. The other question was whether I should do a healthcare specific one or a general one. So I chose a general one, and we'll talk about that in a short time. But then the most important thing, that I should be able to justify the time and the money that is being spent, because it meant a lot of things, So it was for about 18 months, this MBA. And then it was 4 days a month. I had to do full day, 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening classes. And there were a lot of reading. So I had to read typically about 2 textbooks between those sessions of 4 days. And then there was a lot of homework to be done, a lot of pre-class homework to be done. So it was a lot of work. And then unless, and if there was a case that had to be done during those 4 days, we would typically do it at night, so that was a lot of extra work that we had to do. So I spoke to our unit and then the hospital administration, and they all said, okay, we'll support you in whatever time and you need for that. So they were also quite supportive. So I went ahead and did it. But what did I learn? So how I divide the learning during the MBA is into 3 categories. The first category of subjects is what I call as common sense or logic in print. Now, these subjects are things that you already know. You know what innovation means. You know what leadership is. You know what competitive strategy means. All communication is, what is organization behavior, how do you manage power and influence. We do all these things on a daily basis. So nothing of this is new. But then you can only go for so far when you just use your common sense and logic in studying these things, because these are the things that people study professionally. And then when you learn these things or read about these things systematically and objectively, it really enhances or objectifies your knowledge. And this is something that you already know. I'm just going to give you a few examples of what I learned in these subjects. But let me just tell you about the 3 categories. One is this common sense or logic in print. Second is technical subjects. And third is introspective subjects. So we'll look at all 3. So this is the first category. Now we'll touch upon a few of them. So this is competitive strategy. What it means is that, in all industries they use this. We generally don't think about this in a objective or a structural manner. But basically what they say is that if you are a, not a doctor or any person, then you could either take a broad view and then say, okay, whatever products or service you will offer, they will be cheap. So therefore you are looking at low cost but large number, serving a large number of people. Or you can have a differentiation focus, which means you offer something which only you can offer or very few people offer. Now there you don't have to necessarily make it cheap, but then the service or the product is so exclusive, then you can charge anything for that. So you have to decide, you can't do both. So we tend to always make this mistake of trying to do both. We want to offer a high end service, but we also want to be cheap. Now that's almost unachievable in any industry. So therefore you have to decide where you want to go, and then you sort of consciously make this decision whether you want to do a low cost competency type of practice or a business, or do you want to do a strategic target, you segment a particular type of patients or particular type of people who you are going to cater to. So that is competitive strategy that you have. So if there are like 100 people in the market or 100 products in the market, then which of these people you're going to cater to? So which who is going to be your patient? It can't be all patients will come to you. You'll have to choose which patients do you want to cater to. Then when there's innovation, we all know about innovation, how innovation works, and we've seen all Apple and all these guys, Elon Musk and all these guys, and we get awed by their successes. But for every one innovative product or service, there are thousands that don't make it. And therefore we have to have an objective way to analyze before you get into it, and before you spend a lot of time and energy to figure out whether this is likely to be successful. The other thing is, you have to give up at an early stage if it's not working. So there is this Maloney's 16% rule, which means that when you do some innovative product or service, and if you find that it is gaining traction, if you can capture up to 16% of market, then it is going to be likely to be successful. Otherwise you give up early. So these are the things that we don't know, although we know about innovation, but we don't know how we fall in love with our innovations, and then we refuse to look at the possibility of it may not be working, or it may be a failure. So these are the things that we need to know, so that we cut our losses even if it happens. And then you have to be a lifelong learner, especially in 21st century, because here a lot of things that didn't exist when we were young are all norms now. So uh, at some point you're going to find that a chat GPT is going to write your papers. At some point you're going to see that voice recognition is how you type your notes, and all this is going to happen. So if we can't unlearn the way, and if we are rigid about that, then we are going to be behind. The classical example here, I'm going to say, probably a lot of people, or some people at least, may be unhappy with that, is that during the pandemic we learned that you could do teleconsultation. And although the first time I see a patient, I certainly want to see the patient, examine the patient. But the second time, or the third time, or the fifth time I see a patient, it's not necessary for me to examine the patient unless something has changed in this examination finding. So that is a time you can optimize your and the patient's time and cost, and start doing teleconsultation. So we have to start thinking differently for making the best use of technology and whatever is happening. The other thing is, the most commonly, when we see a patient in a hospital or in our clinics, we are not at all worried about what customer service is. We don't mind if the patient is waiting for 2 hours or 3 hours, and that's very common in India, but that would be taken very badly in any other country in the West. So and it's sometimes inevitable, it's going to happen. So as a hospital or as a doctor, this is something that we have to do. All other industries have learned it. You go to a airline industry, even if there is you're not able to board a flight and you're upset about it, you will never find that the air hostess or somebody is going to be rude to you. So in healthcare it's even more, because all the patients will be unhappy all the time. But then, even if somebody has a bad experience with you, you can turn it around by making the last experience of that person good, and then that can negate all the bad experience that they've had. So this is like a typical thing in management, that if you somebody has a bad experience, you give them a voucher for the next time, like a free visit or a free coffee next time, and then that bad experience gets negated. So things like that we are not aware of, and we need to be aware of, so that we can cater to our patients well. Again, the second thing is that when you have people working with you, when you have patients coming to you, you like some things about them, you'll not like everything about them. Obviously people may have good things, they will have bad things, but then when you have a person working with you, when you have a colleague working with you, when you have a senior working with you, it always comes as a package. You can't choose only that, I like this person's efficiency, but I don't like this person's attitude. It doesn't work like that. So you have to accept the person or the situation as a whole. And therefore it's like, you go to a buffet and you can't really choose. You either take all of it or you take none of it. So this is where the organization structure and organizational culture comes in. So how your organization is structured, whether it's a hierarchical structure, whether it's a clan structure, whether almost everybody has a say, almost equal say. So this is a culture that you, as a leader of the team, build into your organization. And it depends on how you behave, or how your team behaves on a daily basis. This is not something that you can change easily. It does take time. So to be aware of what is your organization structure, and to be able to consciously change it to the one you want, is important. And everybody likes to be politically correct and say, I like to have everybody have a say, and everybody should be equal in my organization. But that may not be the best for your organization, because then it reduces your efficiency. The other thing that is in organization structure is, there are some things that are very standard. For example, if you have gastro practice, and if there are patients who are coming for endoscopy, that the staff knows exactly how to set them up, and then you go for a 10-minute time, finish the endoscopy, then they know how to write a note. So things that are established, you follow this part of the graph, which is called as where you focus on efficiency, cost, scaling, things like that. But if you want to do a new thing, then the same system doesn't work. This is very typical for startups and situations where you're trying to develop a new thing. For example, let's say you're trying to do a trial, or doing to do a research. There you have to give them a little slack. You have to their cost efficiencies and all those things don't work. They're going to try things, they're going to fail, and they're going to learn from that. So in the same organization, you have to have people who are focused on efficiency, focused on cost reduction, focused on profitability. And in the same organization, you have to have people who are focused on research, progress, things that are more uncertain. But there you have to have a different working style, because a bad system will beat a good person every single time. So therefore, if the system that you have created, or if the system where you're working is not really geared to what you're trying to achieve, then you're going to fail every single time. And you may be great and you may be very good, but it doesn't matter. The second thing is, every single person, all of us, especially who are in a job, they are afraid of being irreplaceable, because of being replaced. But then that's not the best thing for you, because if you can't be replaced, then you can't be promoted. So therefore, it's very important that wherever you work, you have to create a legacy. You have to create a line of second line, where people can take over the work that you do currently, so that when you grow, they also can fill in those shoes. Otherwise you will not be promotable. Then there are technical subjects. Now technical subjects, I'm sure all of you are familiar, and all of you are afraid of these: accounting, cost analysis, budget, economics, corporate finance, data modeling, data analytics, marketing, manufacturing, operations, supply chain. Some of them are relevant, some of them are not relevant to medical practice. But then you will never be doing this on your own. But then you will be hiring people, and you will know what they are doing. You will be able to monitor them, you will be able to understand what they are doing, you will be able to ask the right questions. That's all you need to do. Otherwise, if you try to get into it yourself, it's too technical for you, it's almost impossible. We shouldn't forget that although you are going to hire and delegate these jobs to different people, you have to focus on the big picture. So you have to know where you are in your hierarchy of needs, and whether you're going to do whether you're working whether you're doing a job, are you working for money, are you, and if things change, then how does it affect your future? Do you have a source of passive income? All these things you have to systematically think about. Otherwise it's very easy to just go with the flow. And then, after your mbbs, you do your ms or md. After your ms or md, then you do a fellowship, or after super specialization, then you take a job, then you do this, then you do that, and you just keep going with the flow for the rest of your life without objectively thinking about these things. But this is very important. At some point you have to focus and figure out the things that are part of this cash flow, and you'll have to know what your risks are in terms of whether do you have any leverage. Is there a situation where if you lose a job tomorrow, then what are you going to do you have a source of passive income, things like that. Now, the third category was the introspective subjects, where I think I benefited the most. So one of the things that they did was what is called as 360 degrees feedback. So they asked me to give feedback on what I think about myself. They asked my direct reportees, my managers, my peers, my patients, and they accumulated feedback from all these sources, which are all anonymous. So they were all honest. But then, and they made this graph for me, and there's several other graphs they made to sort of give me an idea what is my personality, what are my drawbacks, and what are the things that I do well and what are the things I don't do well. And that helped me uncover some of my blind spots. It made me aware of my problems because, having anonymous feedback is really helpful, and we never do that. We have an assumption of how we behave and how we do, and we have other people who will always come and say nice things about you. But then there are problems that they know, and they will be able to tell you if it is if you do a systematic feedback thing. So it gives you a little balanced view of who you are and what are the problems that you want to do, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Now if you're going to try to improvise on your strengths and not look at your weakness, that's a problem. But if you're going to try to only fix your weaknesses and try to do everything well, that's also not possible. So it has to be a balance that has to be achieved. But you have to work on your strengths. That is the primary thing. Now there are several styles of leadership. Now this is, again, if you intuitively think about it, you will know that what styles of leadership are. But then when somebody objectively tells you, and when somebody objectively analyzes for you what is your style of leadership, and is that the right style of leadership that you want to do, then you probably will realize that what are the things that you need to fix, what are the things how you actually want it to be. And therefore this kind of leadership style and analysis has been very helpful for me. And there are certain more ways to describe the same. So where certain types of leadership are high on authority of the leader and autonomy of the team. And then you want to either have like a full controlling type of leadership, or to have high autonomy for my team, and then not very controlling thing for my, but that may not be the best way because it's not very efficient. So depending on the situation, depending on your personality, depending on your team members competency, you have to choose what type of leadership will work for you. But it's important that we don't do it just like that. We need to objectively think about it and do it. So the other thing that this introspective subjects did for me is help me create what is called as a leadership portfolio. So there are these professors who will sit down with you for literally hours on end, and they will ask you what you're doing, and then what do you want to do after 1 year, or what do you want to do after 5 years, what do you want to do after 10 years. And we've never objectively thought about it like that. We just want whatever is happening to continue, and you keep doing more and more. So if somebody is in practice, if they're saying 2 patients today, they want to see 10 patients, they want to see 50 patients after some time. But that's not the goal. There are several other things that we could be doing, and several other things we are probably missing. So not only it is important to know whether you are headed in the right direction, but also why do you want to do it, and also establish a timeline so that you have something to look back and say whether you did it right, or whether you were right in doing what you were doing. Because the biggest mistake most of us make is have small goals. So the problem is that when you make large goals, then people, even your own family members and your friends who you tell, they will laugh at you, which is all right. But then the biggest mistake that you can make for yourself is that have a smaller goal and achieve it. So while we make all these goals, it's also important that we don't forget that there is life, and then you can't waste your life just running after those goals. So having a balanced view about what your goals are and whether those are the right goals for you, whether it's balanced enough for your own growth, for your family's growth, and everything, that is critical. And there are, John Lennon has several quotes in this area, and I really love his quotes. But then, just for the sake of growth, is the ideology of a cancer cell. That is what we need to avoid. So when we are doing all these goals, when you are thinking about all these goals, we need to keep a balanced view, and we have to balance it with what you want to really do in life. Because a lot of people have told me that, life is like a race. It's not, because there's no track and you can ever come first. It's like, being traffic. So there's several people who have started before you, there's several people who have started after you. You may get a flat tire, others will probably get a flat tire. Ultimately, you can never be first in a traffic. So therefore, life is exactly like that. And then remember, you have to work smart, not very hard, smart. So this is the Pareto's principle, which I'm sure all of you are aware, that only 20% of your results lead to 80%, efforts lead to 80% of your results. So it's very common, especially the Japanese guys have really made it into a system where they will analyze what efforts, what you do on a daily basis, and they will it will be very obvious to you that out of all the efforts that you do or things that you do in a day, almost 20% is what is really going to give you the results, and a lot of it is not. So all this is things that the management guys do on a regular basis. They will do an analysis of their organization, they will do an analysis of their own thing, and it really works. So with all this information, what did I do? I wanted to, for my department. So what I did was I started a lot of outreach clinics. We started doing transplants outside in Western India and even some internationally, and then we grew. I think that we had much better camaraderie with the management, with colleagues and staff. I trained all my team members. I can say this with a lot of pride that a lot of my team members and my colleagues have gone on to start their own transplant units, and I take a lot of pride in that. So there is a succession plan. So if somebody goes, they will go happy. There is we did the cost analysis of our transplants, and we were able to reduce the cost of transplants by almost 3.5 to 4 lakhs, just by optimizing what we did not need. And then I also started looking at the future and started making some progress in minimally invasive liver surgery. What I realized after all this is that, I dropped my idea of ever owning a hospital or be going into hospital administration. I also thought of having a group of transplant professionals and then, offering service to all the hospitals like group practice, which also again I dropped. And this is a long topic, so we won't cover that in detail. But professionally, I thought that it's most satisfying for me if I do selected or difficult cases. I focus on cutting edge technologies such as minimally invasive surgery, machine perfusion, things like that. And then something that I've been wanting to do for a long time was start a medical device company. And then I successfully did that. Now we have 2 patents in that company. So some things that I wanted to do, which would give me more happiness. So I started doing those things. But because you can't really do everything, the whole point of doing this is that you may have like 20 ways to grow. You can grow your practice, you can own a hospital, you can do XYZ, but then you have to, and all of them are good ideas, but then you have to take out those good ideas and figure out which is likely to work and then choose those and work on that. I also realized that working on new ideas, especially the technology ideas, is really expensive. Patents is expensive, and therefore you can only do limited amount of it. The other thing that happened is that I worked with a lot of guys who were from different fields like finance, like technology and others. And then I realized that their learnings from them is really beneficial to us. For example, there was a guy from airline industry. He said, why don't you use checklists? And then I read the checklists book, and then it was really there, so they use everything as a checklist. The pilot sits and then checks off everything. Now, healthcare being so critical, even more than airline industry, we didn't use checklists. And then we started using it, and then we made it more objective, and it works. So it reduces the number of errors. The last thing I did is that when we had the medical devices made, I was able to pitch to investors. When they asked me a question, what is the valuation of your company? I knew the answer. When they said, what's your revenue? What's your gross? What's your expected projections? I knew those answers. So if you're going to do all this, then it was helpful. Can it help you if you want to do it? Yes, of course it can help you, depending on your situation though. So if you're a clinician or a surgeon who is practicing, it can, it'll probably tell you better how to market yourself better, expand your network, use digital platforms. So the traditional marketing is all gone. Now, if you can't do social media, if you can't do Google ads, if you can't do SEO, then it's not as cost efficient, because not only traditional marketing is more expensive. For example, newspapers and stuff like that. It is also cheap. I didn't know before this. And then manage your money better, plan your future, have a source of passive income. If you are a clinician but who's working in a hospital, then the situation may be different. The benefits may be different, because here it's often the clinicians and the management, they don't understand each other points of view, and the management thinks that the doctors are making too much money, and the doctors think that the management takes away everything and we don't get anything. But you have to understand their point of view, or each other's point of view, to really realize what is the point at which you start fighting with them. And before that, you have to just understand, because they also have a valid point. You can negotiate a better reimbursement for yourself, because you will now know the technical terms when you go to negotiate. When they come and tell you, give me what is your going to be your capex for this next year, you hate that question. When somebody wants to audit you, you hate them for that question. But now you'll know why it's required, and you'll be able to do that better. And then you will be able to plan your future path better. But you have to realize that if you own a hospital, you are one guy who is a clinician, who is the CFO, then CEO, marketing officer, quality officer, research, HR, everything built into one. And then while you use your common sense and logic as substitutes for formal training or knowledge in that field, it's never going to be sufficient. And then at some point you need to hire people who are experts in this, but then it becomes so expensive that it becomes unviable for your hospital. And therefore there's sometimes a lot of people have made this mistake of literally spending crores of rupees to open a hospital, like bigger hospital of 200 crores, 100 crores or 50 crores, and then realizing that that was never viable. And then that learning comes at such a huge cost. We have to understand that we are not supermen. Either we use this knowledge of other people who are experts in this field, or we have to learn it ourselves so that we can do a better job. If you're a hospital owner, you have to again you will be able to focus on your area of interest. Like if you're a clinician and you are also a hospital owner, you will focus on your clinical thing better if you are interested in that. But if you're more interested in administration, then you hire more clinicians and then you focus on administration. So things like that. You'll plan your future growth. If you at some point want to sell your hospital, you will know what's the right value that you should get. You'll be able to optimize your hospital's work culture, cost efficiencies, things like that. So this is something. You can't be a superman, you can't be good in everything, but these are the ways that you can benefit if you are a hospital owner and you're trying to get into this. But if you're wanting to look beyond being a clinician and beyond being a hospital owner, then sky is the limit, because there are so many things. And again, whenever we start to think about expanding our horizon, we always think about medical related things, which is not necessarily the best place to be. For example, one of the investments I made about 2 years ago was in electronic vehicle space, and then that has given me very good yield. So our typical thing is, whenever we want to expand our horizon, we are again looking at only medical areas, but that's not necessarily the best thing. Because if you really want to grow, then you have to be a little crazy, a little unreasonable. Because if you're going to just think logically and reasonably, and if Steve Jobs had just thought logically and reasonably, he would have only gone so far. There is no way that you could have thought of iPhone when it was norm not to. All these technologies didn't even exist. And then if you're doing a job and if you have a lot of ideas, or if you really want to start your own company and do something, then you have to prioritize that and put your time and energy into that. Otherwise, it's somebody else's dream that you're going to fulfill. And without there is no gains without risks. If the risk works out well, great. If it doesn't work out well, then also you can be a teacher. But the biggest opportunity comes for people like us, who understand technology and who also have the background of medicine. because literally the software, the hardware, these fields are almost getting saturated. There are new technologies such as AI, there are drones, there are robotics, and there are so many players in that. But there are very few people who understand technology as well as medicine or biology well. And imagine things that are going to happen in the future. It's going to be all where these two technologies, the technology and biology works. One of the biggest example is how the Elon Musk is doing Neuralink. Oh, that has the potential to fundamentally change the world. And I think that's where we have an edge over everybody else. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Mohanka, for such an insightful session. I think now doctor just cannot afford to be just doctors. It may be a case for like 20, 25 years ago, but now we should become more than just a doctor. And just to like to add comments, my experience before we open the floor for question and answers. So I started, doing MBA. It's like just with sir, just out of curiosity. So wanted to understand all the verticals of managing hospitals and people. Basically, the business side of health system. And what I think most clinicians running the department know how to run the department, but they probably lack other operational and strategic planning skills to grow the department and just take it forward. So that is the lack. I can feel here. I feel clinical skills just don't prepare us to create a system level change, and that's where the MBA comes into picture. These skills enhance our ability to drive the change in the healthcare. And it makes you think outside a box that Dr. Ravi already mentioned, apart from medicine. So that's my take. I'm in a second semester, looking forward to in the second year. We'll see how it goes. So I will open the floor for questions. If anybody has questions, you can unmute and ask questions.
So there are already two questions in the box. So let me start with those. So
Okay.
one is Siddharth, who has asked whether what's 360 degrees analysis. So basically, there is a company, there are several companies that do this. One of the companies that is most famous in this is called as Qualtrics. And they, for this, you need a trained person who will analyze those results. So basically what happens is that once you have a person who will be your feedback assessor, then that person will ask you who are your colleagues, who are your patients. So, you take permission from them so that they will get an email and they have to fill out a questionnaire about you. And then they will, all those feedback will not come to you. It will come to the feedback assessor. And there is objective questions, there is subjective things. And then you will be able to they will be able to give you a full report of that. So it's a process. It takes about a few weeks because some of the people that you'll send questionnaire to, they may not respond to in some time, but that's okay. And then it will take some time. But there is in a lot of programs, it's inbuilt. This insight sort of subjects are inbuilt into your programs. The second question is, please elaborate on career opportunity intersection of biology and technology. Very interesting. So basically, I'll give you an example, very simple. So there are several things that you do on a daily basis, and you'll have to just find where technology can be easily applied to enhance what you're doing right now. For example, a lot of us use laparoscopes to do gallbladder surgery and other surgeries. Now, one of these days I thought, why do you still have to put the optic cable and that power from the console to the camera? Because the cameras in your phone are so small and the LED lights are so small. So it's easily possible to make a wireless camera for laparoscopy or others. And then why doesn't something like that exist? So depending on what you're doing, you will be able to sort of open your mind and figure out, oh, there is this gap, this could be made better. And then you will be able to ask a technology person and they will be able to help you figure out if that's a good idea or not. And even if it is a good idea, whether it is commercially viable or not. So things like that. So there is a process for that. IIT Bombay has a cell called as BETIC, where they invite new ideas, then they will formally do this evaluation, and then they will work on it if they find that it is a useful idea. So I can connect you with them also, and I do a few projects with them also. Yes, and then Neha is asked, force you to think out of the box. Yes, so the only way you will think out of the box is when you are in a uncomfortable zone. As long as you're in the comfort zone, you will never think out of the box. Yes, and then Dr. Prakash has a question. He's been planning to do MBA for a long time. What is your suggestion? So it depends on your situation. So the main question is, where do you want to do it, and how much time will you be able to give? Can you do a full-time one, which is the highest value? But if you can't do a full-time one, how much time? So there are several programs, the most well-known ones. So all these programs, such as the IIM Ahmedabad, then ISB, and like the one I did, IIT Bombay, they all offer what is called as executive MBA, or like a hybrid mode, and where some of them you have to go there every 3 months for 15 days. Then even Harvard, you can go to Boston, but that's although very expensive, but they will ask you to go for 15 days every 3 months for 1 year, and then you can do those such sessions, and then do like their homework and in between those sessions. And you can do it depending on your situation, how much where you can do it, and how much time you can spare. You'll have to choose the program. Then Vidhu has a question for people still in PG. What is your suggestion? Start early. It doesn't matter. If you are able to give time while you're in the PG, do it. If not, then do it after your PG. Whenever you get, you'll have to dedicate time, because for all practical purposes, for those 18 months, all I did was, apart from doing my clinical work, just even in the hospital when I was free, I was just reading books and doing my homework. So it's a lot of commitment for those at least 1 year to 2 years that you're going to do it. Apart from your clinical, you can barely manage to sort of do anything else. And then, I told my daughters and my wife that for the next 1.5 years, we are not going on any vacation. So that was like a given.
So sir, do you find doing MBA as a distraction to clinical practice? Like
No. If it can be balanced well. It is not a distraction. You'll have to do both, and you'll have to be able to plan it so that you can balance it both. Now, this is a very interesting question from Siddharth. So he's asking the earning from as a clinician, and you'll not be able to match it even if you are a CEO of a hospital or a researcher, which is absolutely true. That is one of the things that I initially thought, that CEOs and the medical administrators in India make a lot of money, and they can never match the money that clinicians make. And therefore, I think it is something that you will do only if you don't like clinical practice. Otherwise, if you're a good clinician, if you're a good surgeon, and this is something that excites you, then you do clinical work. But if you're also giving some time to the hospital administration, for example, if you're part of a, let's say, committee in the hospital, then you will be able to do a great job. So one of the reasons I dropped that in being a hospital administrator was because I realized that as long as I am a clinician, I am much more valuable. So that's not my area. I mean, the way a medical administrator in India is, the job of a medical administrator in India, especially money as well as the work, is totally different compared to West. So in India, most of the hospitals, the medical administrators are firefighters. They are not strategic thinkers. So they're just, every day they are fighting with somebody's bill being a problem, or somebody's mortality, or somebody's creating havoc. So they're constantly firefighting, and the money is not great. Whereas if you're a medical administrator in the West, you are doing a lot of strategic work. The firefighting is done by the staff, the PAs and stuff like that. And there you get paid much better than clinicians. So therefore, depending on where you want to be, a medical administrator job could be great, or it could be not so great.
So, sir, do you think it's a good idea to combine MD with MBA in early years? Because if you see the states, United States data, where almost 40% of medical graduates either their degrees combined with either MBA or MPH or PhD. So, do you think it's a good option for medical graduates?
Correct. Yeah. So that is the same question that Maitri has also asked. So I will combine the answers into the same. So So, mostly in the West, what happens is once you've become like a director level in your practice in the West, then people naturally tend to do MBA or some management course and then start going from clinical to the management thing. Whereas in India, we don't do that. And the reason is, and if which is different from masters in public health. So MPH is only going to prepare you for good statistics, a different profile of job. So not a lot of MPH people will have knowledge about the finance, the accounting, things like that. So therefore, if you're looking at being an administrator, then MBA is better than MPH. Doing it from a good place is important. But your so in West, you are typically better off doing it after you've slightly settled in your clinical practice, because there it is really busy. And then in the West, subsidized for you. So if a typical MBA will cost you in the West, let's say $50,000-$60,000, if you're in the same institute, then it will probably cost you like $10,000. So it's really very cheap for you. But in India, you don't get that advantage. So here you can do it whenever you think that you will be able to devote time for that. And then the cost is all yours. So there is no institute in India, at least hospitals in India, that pay for your MBA. Although I was surprised, because when I did the MBA, almost 50% of the class was paid for by their employers for as a path to their career. And that was a surprise, because all these big companies, they will pay for their employees to progress, and they will pay for their courses, they pay for all that. So it was a big surprise. But unfortunately, in India, hospitals don't pay, probably will never pay for that. Now the next question is from Apurva. While doing general MBA, how do you choose subjects like marketing, finance, or so there is general MBA. So that is, for most of the MBAs are actually general, but there are specific ones for healthcare, for marketing, for finance. There are. So the highest yield for you is if you do a general MBA. But then you will realize at some point that, I want to be an investment banker, or I want to be a marketing guy because this is what excites me, or I want to be a hospital owner or administrator. So then you focus on those subjects. So typically what happens in most programs, they will allow you the first year, like if it's a 1.5 years program, for the first year, it will be general. And then the last 6 months will be specialization. So that is something that you'll only realize when you have done your general subjects, to see what excites you or what is the path that you want to take. What's your take on consultancy work in healthcare industry? Great question. So unfortunately, you can't be a consultant unless you have gone through the learning and the drill. So somebody who has been a CEO, somebody who's been a medical administrator for some time, knows what and has grown through those problems, how to solve. If a license gets cancelled, how do you solve that? If officer comes to the hospital, biomedical waste officer comes to your hospital trying to threaten you, how do you solve that problem? If you've gone through that learning, then you become a consultant and earn well from that. The problem is that without that hands-on learning, you are no better than somebody who thinks that they know how to solve the problem. So therefore, if you've gone through that drill and have really now learned things that are not written in books, that is when you become very valuable as a consultant. So your prediction about online consultancy future in interventional branch like gastroenterology, of course. So interventions are going to be always difficult online, because you can only do so much remotely. But then if you can do it remotely, even if a guy who's senior to you, much better known than you, can also do it online, and therefore the competition is going to be much more. So you're best suited to do online consultancy in situations where you already have a good grasp of the subject and you are just answering questions or solving those day-to-day problems. That is my take. I'm not sure if I answered your question accurately, but I hope my understanding of your question was all right.
I think we are probably done with the questions and also with the time. So I will again thank Dr. Ravi Mohanka to become our first ever speaker in this series. The whole idea to start this series is to not to give in-depth knowledge, but to sensitize people in different stages of their career and just take this initiative forward. And we'll, as a community, probably, we'll continue to grow as a community. We'll continue to have 2 speaker a month, and we already have like 2 months of waiting now. So we'll continue to have this series. Will grow, and probably will get support from other specialty also. Thank you, Dr. Ravi, Mohanka, for this opportunity.